Hey everybody, Ron Bielefeld, Whistling Wings Photography. Welcome to another video. In this video, I want to talk about what Canon just did to its R5 camera body. More specifically, what it did to the IBIS IS performance in this camera. If you're interested in knowing more, stay tuned. Hey everybody! Yeah, the Canon R5 and IBIS IS performance. It's been a little bit of a history with this camera. I'll take you through that history as far as my experiences. When it first came out, the R5 with the 100 to 500, I must admit I was a little disappointed with the erratic behaviors that I was seeing in IBIS IS. To Canon's credit, however, they did come out with a firmware update pretty quickly that corrected most of those problems. But some problems, maybe one or two that really specify here, kind of lingered. The one is how quickly the IBIS IS would kick in, per se, when you started shooting a video clip or started shooting a burst of images. It took it a while. It took it a second to kick in. And then it might actually kind of take a vacation for a minute and then come back again. And that was annoying. But overall, I thought it was pretty good, especially mode 1 for static images. As far as action images, taking pictures of action, birds in flight, which I do a lot of, I didn't like what I was seeing a lot of times if I tried to use mode 2 or mode 3 on lenses that had those modes. And even on the 800 f11, which I have, which only has one mode, on or off, I would just turn it off. And so for action shots, I would just turn IBIS IS off by turning the IS switch on the lenses to off and shoot, just relying basically on the shutter speed. Most of the time I'm shooting pretty fast shutter speeds, but you don't get the benefit of a stabilized viewfinder that way and things like that. But I was doing better that way. I was getting more sharp images that way. Now Canon just came out with firmware 1.4.0, and I've been testing this new firmware the last couple mornings, specifically really paying attention to the IBIS performance, because Canon said that it improved the performance with this firmware update. And I will tell you that I thought it was pretty good. Like I said, before this firmware update, when we were on 1.3.1, I believe it was, it is night and day almost between then and now having 1.4.0 installed on my two R5 bodies. The problem with the initiation being slow, heck, when I was shooting video, sometimes I had to like jiggle the camera to get it to wake up and say, hey, stabilize the image. That is all gone from what I can see at this point. For video, it's instantaneously stabilizing the scene. For still images, I never, like I said, I didn't use mode 2 or mode 3. And even in mode 1, especially with like the RF 800 f11, if I was using mode 1 and I was shooting a burst, it would like jitter across the screen, the viewfinder, a little bit, and when you looked at those images, they weren't sharp because something just wasn't jiving in there with the IBIS IS. That is all gone now, and this thing is really rock solid now. I thought, like I said, was pretty good, except a little annoying things here and there. But I think with this firmware update, things have changed, and I've been just super impressed the last 2 mornings. I'm going to show a video clip here, and you can see this video clip was taken with my camera, one of my R5s, before I installed 1.4.0. And you can see that in the very beginning of the clip, when I start recording, it's a little jittery. Then all of a sudden it'll smooth out, and then as the birds fly, it'll get jittery again until the birds land, and then it kind of smooths out again. And that kind of epitomizes what the behavior of IBIS IS was like before this latest firmware update. With the still images, you can see they're sharp, and it's really hard to show performance and what the IBIS IS is really doing with still images, but they're sharp. And I'm going to put these in a gallery that you'll be able to get to via a link in the description of this video, and you can look and see that some of these were shot with pretty slow shutter speeds, so it's working the way it should. I was using eye detect with tracking almost all the time. These were taken with various lenses, my 100 to 500 with a 1.4 on it, without a 1.4 on it, my 600 f4 with a 1.4 on it, the 800 f11, all handheld. All the video was handheld. All the still images were handheld. And if you look at these next video clips here, you can see that they're pretty darn stable handheld at over 800 millimeters in pretty low light. A lot of these, so the colors aren't popping or anything like that, but it's really just to show how stable you can really be shooting over 800 millimeters handheld with IBIS IS working really, really well now with the latest firmware update. So before the firmware update, I wouldn't even use mode 2 or mode 3. Like I said, now the last 2 mornings I've been shooting mode 2 and mode 3 like I used to do when we just had IS in our cameras, like with the 1DX Mark II, and I'm seeing performance like I used to see, even better, stronger performance. And so I'm starting to shoot mode 2 now for smooth panning scenarios, shooting mode 3 for erratic movement scenarios, birds running around, up, down, all over the place, and I'm seeing really sharp images almost all the time now, as you can see from the images that I have in the gallery. I think they're sharp, and again, no sharpening on these images. These are basically just the raw images converted to JPEGs, full-size JPEGs, so there's been no sharpening, there's been no processing to the still images at all for the most part. I'm really, really happy with what I'm seeing. So if some people are hesitant to put new firmware on their cameras sometimes, especially if they think their cameras are working just fine and that firmware update isn't really going to give them anything that they really need. I personally will go ahead and install 1.4.0 firmware on your R5s and see what happens. I think you're going to be really, really pleasantly surprised with how much better the IBIS IS works in coordination, providing you with much better stabilization and some really, really sweet video and still images. Do that, test it, let me know what you're finding out, what you're seeing with your imagery in the comments of this video. Maybe you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but let me know. Video the same way. Is it working better? Now, this firmware update didn't say anything, Canon didn't say anything about it improving the autofocus performance. But here's something else I think I've been noticing. It's only been a couple mornings, so this may change. But I think the autofocus isn't getting stuck on the background or off subject as much as it used to. We've all seen it happen, especially with mirrorless cameras, unlike digital SLR cameras, where it'll get stuck on the background, and even if you're using you're half pressing, you're pumping or whatever, and you're on the subject, it won't leave the background. It'll just stay stuck there. It won't recycle. It won't cycle to try to get on the subject again that you want. I think it's cycling better now. I think it's when you tell it to refocus, try to refocus, it's doing it. It's grabbing the subject more often. It's not getting stuck off subject as much as it was. So again, pay attention to that if you would, and let me know what you're finding, what you're seeing when you're doing your photography. Leave me some comments so we can see if Canon actually made improvements on that aspect of the R5 as well. So with that, I'm going to leave it, and then hopefully get a bunch of comments from you all letting me know what you're seeing with respect to these issues, and hopefully their improvement on the R5 with this firmware update. Until next time, get out there, be safe, take great images, and I'll see you soon. Okay, so this is a little demonstration of how the IBIS IS is now working with firmware 1.4.0 installed on a Canon R5. I have it on a tripod, everything on a tripod, and I'm recording with my Atomos Ninja 5, so I'm not looking through the viewfinder, but I'm going to, of course, simulate what happens when you shake the camera. This is coming up right here. This is without stabilization on, okay? And so you can focus and you can shoot, and it's going to be wobbly, okay? It's going to jitter all over the place. Now let's go ahead and turn image stabilizer on the lens, and now this will activate both IBIS in the camera and IS on the lens. And now we'll focus, and now I'm jittering the camera and I'm shooting, jittering and shoot, jitter, shoot. And you can see the stabilization is instantaneous and is very, very good. Okay, so now let's go to mode 3. This is mode 3, mode 3. Now mode 1 is for static subjects, when it's going to stabilize in all directions, all axes of movement. Mode 3 is for use when you're shooting handheld, tripod even, I guess, erratic subjects. Stop, start, up, down, very, very erratic. So now you can see when I focus and I'm jiggling the camera, it doesn't stabilize the view, but the second I start shooting, now I'm shooting, it stabilizes the view. That's the deal right there. Okay, that's awesome. Mode 2 is going to be a little bit harder on a static subject to really demonstrate, but again, I'm focusing now and I'm jiggling, and you might see a little bit more jiggle there. All right, and if you shoot, boom, 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 boom. So it's kind of hard to demonstrate, but anyway, it's still stabilizing really well and instantaneously in mode 2 as I was shooting there. So there you have it. And the real difference between 1.3.1 and now 1.4.0 is that the stabilization is instantaneous. It doesn't take a second or to activate and stabilize the view. It doesn't stabilize and then get erratic and jiggly and then stabilize again. So I'm really thrilled with the better implementation of IS IBIS now with 1.4.0. I think it's made a huge difference.